Discover 3 spine-chilling true Airbnb experiences, unexplained terrors revealed in haunted rentals. The moment Jess and Mark pulled up to the quaint Airbnb, unease curled in their stomachs. A murky haze blanketed the suburban Ohio cottage, making it look like a forgotten relic. This was supposed to be their escape, a weekend away from the gnawing economic pressures of their lives. Jess clutched the keys in her palms, excitement battling with an unsettling instinct. They stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind them. At first, the place seemed charming. Antique furniture and lace curtains whispered romance. But as night fell, shadows lengthened and thickened. A sinister energy seeped into the rooms. A soft rustle echoed from the walls, unsettling Mark. He furrowed his brow, straining to make sense of it. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice tight. Jess, flushing the moment away, chuckled. "It's just the old pipes, babe. Relax." Still, a chill crawled down Mark's spine. It felt like something was watching them. Later, as they settled on the couch, a shiver snaked through the air. Faint sounds emerged, whispers curling around their ears, footsteps padding in the darkness. Jess dismissed it, attributing it to the old house settling. But Mark wasn't convinced. The hiss of the wind outside sounded like a chorus of ghosts lamenting the past. "Let's grab snacks from town," he suggested, but Jess waved him off, saying they were fine for now. Just then, they spotted an old drawer in the bedside table. Curiosity piqued, they opened it, revealing crumpled newspaper clippings. The articles detailed the eerie disappearance of a girl named Rachel, vanished without a trace years ago. A sense of dread washed over them, an uneasiness tightening its grip. "This can't be real," Jess murmured, flipping through the articles, her heart racing. Mark's face paled. Could the whispers, the shadows, be somehow connected? "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." That night, they peered outside, seeing flickering candlelight in the backyard. Unease thickened the air as they noticed their neighbors, faces turned, whispers trailing into silence whenever they neared. "Why are they acting like that?" Jess asked. Mark's eyes darted toward the old oak tree, standing like a guardian, shrouded in shadows. "Let's get out of here," he pleaded, but the door seemed to resist their attempts to leave, creaking as if it held them captive inside. As they turned to find something else to distract them, they discovered a door at the back to the basement, long since forgotten. An unsettling dread loomed over them as silence swallowed the air. "What if they know we found out?" Jess's voice cracked, her grip tightening on Mark's arm. They teetered on the edge of a decision that could plunge them into the abyss, unearthing horrors that might tie them into a past they weren't ready to confront. The air was thick with pressure. Curiosity battled fear, drawing them closer to the hidden secrets beneath their feet. Would they dare step into the unknown? The basement door loomed before them, its darkened outline beckoning like a siren's call. Each moment stretched as Jess stared at the rusted knob, a layer of dust thick enough to swallow their cowardice. She labored to swallow the knot forming in her throat. "We've come this far," she whispered, voice barely afloat in the heavy air. Mark's uncertainty seeped into every crack between them, thickening the tension. "Oh, come on, Jess. This isn't a good idea," he breathed, glancing toward the flickering candlelight outside. The neighbors remained silhouettes, their shadows dancing in derision, as if mocking their fear.
but Jess felt an invisible thread pulling them downwards. "What if we find out what happened to Rachel?" she urged. "What if it helps us understand?" Mark clenched his jaw, eyes darting between the door and Jess. "Or what if it gets us killed? We could just leave, right now," he insisted, his hand hovering above the knob as he fought against the temptation of discovery. A sudden creak from the floorboards above shattered their debate. The sound echoed like the mocking laughter of the house itself. It sent a jolt through Mark, snapping whatever his resolve had been. "We're done here," he said, turning to retreat, but Jess caught his arm. "No, what if this house is a prison? What if we can't just leave?" she countered, breathless with mounting dread and fascination. The air thickened, time stretched until Jess, heart hammering, released Mark's arm. Despite the mounting fear pooling in her stomach, she twisted the knob and pulled the door open, revealing darkness thick enough to feel. A musty smell coiled upwards, wrapping around them like a shroud. "Stay close," she whispered, stepping inside. The darkness swallowed sound as she ventured down the stairs, which groaned underfoot like they were protesting her descent. Every step felt like an invasion, an unwelcome interruption of secrets long buried. Mark hesitated but followed, heart thundering. The basement was colder than the rest of the house, and a sensation of dread slithered down his spine. Their cell phone flashlights barely pierced the blackness, illuminating cobwebbed corners and peeling paint. Then, in the far corner, something glinted. Jess edged closer, curiosity overpowering her fear. A small wooden chest with intricate carvings adorning its surface lay hidden beneath a pile of debris. "Look!" she exclaimed, voice echoing in the stillness. As she reached for the chest, a sudden gust of air sent a chill racing through the shroud.
Room. The temperature dropped, and Mark shivered violently. Jess paused, glancing back at him, the chest still inches from her fingertips. "Did you feel that?" she gasped. Before she could touch it, the whispers returned, swirling around them like a tempest. "Let her go! Let her go!" The voices were sharp, frantic, urging them back, drowning them in a wave of fear. Mark's trembling hands reached for Jess, pulling her back. "We need to leave, now!" But just as they turned to flee, a loud crash echoed from above. The lights in the house flickered ominously, and the ground beneath them trembled. Panic surged through Mark as he grabbed Jess, yanking her toward the stairs. "Something's wrong!" he shouted, racing back towards the opening. But the whispers grew louder, pulling at their minds, sinking in like ice. "Stay, stay." An eerie laughter pierced through the chaos, followed by a heavy thud. It stopped them in their tracks. "What was that?" Jess stammered, her eyes wide with terror. Mark's expression hardened. "Something is trying to keep us here." Suddenly, the lights flickered out completely, plunging them into an abyss of darkness. Jess's heart raced. They were trapped. Silence pressed down around them, thickening like a blanket. And just then, through the blackness, came a soft, familiar voice. The voice of Rachel. "Help me, please." Their blood turned to ice. The chilling plea reverberated in the darkness, echoing their unasked questions. With every second, it became clear that stepping into the unknown had awakened something far worse than they feared. What horrors awaited them in the pitch-black void? The darkness wrapped around them like a suffocating shroud, the air thick with an unsettling silence that sparked Jess's panic. "Rachel?" she called out, her voice quivering. The echoes taunted her, bouncing around the basement walls, consuming her very essence. Mark's grip on her arm tightened. "What if it's not her?" he whispered, dread creeping into his tone. "What if it's something else?" "Please, help me," the voice urged again, more desperate this time, sending icy fingers trailing down Jess's spine. Just a few more steps into the void, and they would uncover the truth that had haunted the house. but each instinct screamed for her to retreat. Mark's breath matched her quickening heartbeat as they both strained to listen. And then came another sound, that heavy thud, like a door slamming shut upstairs. Jess's heart dropped. "We need to go, now," she muttered, panic drenching her voice. But Mark wasn't moving. "What if she's really down here?" he pleaded, his expression caught between hope and terror. "What if she needs us?" With a deep breath, Jess took a step forward, drawn toward the voice like a moth to a flame. "Rachel, we're coming!" she shouted, forcing courage through trembling lips. In that moment, the chest in the corner seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its intricate carvings glowing faintly, illuminating the faces of both Mark and Jess. For a brief second, clarity pierced through the dread. It felt important, even sacred in a twisted way. Before either of them could decide, a sharp breeze whipped through the room, extinguishing their cell phone flashlights. Darkness engulfed them, a consuming, suffocating void. They stumbled, grasping at anything to steady themselves, breath catching in their throats as voices crescendoed once more into a chaotic symphony. "Stay, stay, don't go!" "Let's leave!" Mark shouted, panic infusing his words, and without thinking, he yanked Jess away from the chest. But the whispers twisted, growing frantic, almost pleading. "No, come back, she's here!" The voices rose, crashing over them like waves in a storm. Jess felt her legs turn to jelly as cold terror gripped her, the sensation spilling through her fingers and into the very bones of her being. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath them. The sound of feet scuffling echoed in the hollow darkness. A panting breath enveloped them, the scent of damp earth filling their lungs. Jess shrieked as something warm brushed against her ankle, but before she knew what it was, Mark's hand shot out, pulling her even closer. "Go back! Get out!" a raspy voice wheezed from the shadows. "No, Rachel!" Jess cried, fighting against Mark's hold, yearning to reach the source of the voice. The temperature plummeted, and her breath fogged in the air. They were losing time. As if in response to her plea, the chest lurched forward, the lid creaking open. An unnatural glow flickered from within, spilling eerie light over the chaos that surrounded them. Just before she could glimpse what lay inside, the shadows thickened, swirling around them with a violent insistence. The whispers morphed into a cacophony of screams, pleading, angry, desperate voices shrieking all at once. "Join us! Join us!" they beckoned, drawing closer like a swarm. Mark shook with fear, his grip faltering. "Not again! Jess!" he yelled, moving toward the stairs. "We can't let it take you!" But Jess's feet felt rooted, the otherworldly pull of the chest paralyzing her. "I won't leave without her." Mark's eyes darted around, desperate. "This is a mistake." With one last glance, Jess's resolve hardened. "I have to know." Before another word could escape her lips, darkness erupted, a pulse of horror radiating from the chest. In that instant, the world around them distorted, stretching like a nightmare unraveling. Jess felt herself being pulled into the light, as though being ripped apart by the voices that screamed for her. Then, everything went black. Mark stumbled backward, fear etched across his features. He glanced desperately around the chaos, searching for Jess, for any sign of her presence. But it was only the overwhelming silence, punctuated by the churning whispers that refused to fade. The light began to flicker, revealing the chest once more, now eerily closed tight, as if it had never been opened at all. He stood there, breathless. Was she gone? He had to find her. With a final look at the engulfing shadows, he stepped toward the chest, heart racing, fear mingling with a desperate hope. But what awaited him inside became the true terror that lay in wait. What horrors would he uncover in the chest of darkness?
Mark's fingertips grazed the cool wood of the chest, and a chill shot through him, a visceral warning echoing in his gut. Heart pounding, he hesitated, glancing back over his shoulder at the choking darkness behind him. The whispers swirled, a mantra of despair and longing, like a relentless tide threatening to drag him under. "Jess!" he shouted, the name a desperate prayer. Silence stretched, laden with tension, before the murmur of voices lowly returned. Deeper now, more sinister. "Join us, join us, don't leave." With renewed urgency, he gripped the chest's lid, now slick with a sheen of cold sweat. The pulse of energy radiating from within beckoned him closer, and he felt his mind slipping, caught between fear and an overwhelming compulsion to know, to find out what lay hidden inside. Taking a breath that felt heavy and suffocating, he yanked the lid open. What spilled out was not light, but shadows. A twisted darkness curled like smoke, slithering out as if hungry. Faces appeared within the gloom, the same pleading eyes that haunted Jess earlier, whispering unintelligible secrets in a chorus of agony. "Mark!" A voice broke through the chaos, painfully familiar, yet laced with sorrow. It was Rachel's voice, but something was off. It wasn't just a plea for aid. It was laced with an undercurrent of something sinister, as if she had been warped by the very darkness they sought to unravel. "Rachel, where are you?" His voice wavered, trembling with a mixture of hope and dread. "Down here. You need to come." Each word dripped like poison, pulling him into the chest of despair. Hot terror pulsed in his veins as he caught movement at the edges of the swirling shadows. They seemed to beckon him, hinting at horrors that lay just below the surface. Suddenly, the shadows surged upward, engulfing him. The air thickened, pressing down on him with the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. His breath quickened, and panic gripped him again, the room growing colder still. Sapient whispers slithering deeper into his consciousness. "Join us." It wasn't just an invitation. It felt like a curse, a slow fade leading into madness. Then, just as sudden as it had come, the darkness retreated slightly, revealing something glimmering beneath. A necklace, delicate and tarnished, lay against the chest's scratchy interior. Instinctively he reached for it, but as soon as his fingers brushed against the cold metal, the shadows shrieked back in fury. "No! You mustn't!" Mark recoiled, but the force tugged at his wrist, binding him. Shapes danced around him, flickering like flames in the night. And then he saw her. Jess. A vision of her stood far away, trapped and teetering on the edge of an abyss. Just beyond.
Her, the chest writhed. Something inside it was alive, writhing, screaming to break free. "Help me, Mark!" Jess's voice cracked, the distance between them stretching endlessly as shadows pulled her further. "You have to do something!" Frantically, he yanked at the necklace again, just wanting to let it go. But as he did, a crack formed in the very fabric of reality around him. The basement walls shuddered, shaking loose dust and cobwebs, revealing glimpses of a past he was not prepared to face. Screams from ages long gone echoing in his ears, pressure building like a storm. "Don't let it take you! Don't—" Before her words could finish, the darkness surged, swallowing Jess whole. Mark's heart stopped. He staggered back, gasping. Everything around him pulsed with dread. The shadows twisted and turned, an angry mass of lost souls screeching in their torment. Desperation surged within him as he fought against the pull, turning his gaze to the chest. The necklace, glinting with a soft, eerie light, seemed to call him back.
No, he couldn't risk falling into that abyss. But could he let Jess go? He stood at a crossroads, heart racing wildly, a choice looming. What was the true price of saving her? Suddenly, a realization hit him, sharp as glass. There was only one way to break the cycle of darkness. He would have to confront the truth hidden in the shadows. Taking a deep breath, Mark stepped closer to the chest. Would he become one of them, or could he confront the horrors that wished to consume him? The answer just beyond his reach. The shadows tightened around Mark, a living entity pushing against his skin, demanding allegiance. As he stood there, the chest loomed before him, a void pulsing with malicious intent. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, every word dripping with venom. Join us. The urge to flee coursed through him, but he steadied himself, somehow grasping on to the dread. Was it not life that pushed him forward towards the darkness, toward the truth? He had to unlock the chest's secrets, defeat the fear that threatened to swallow him whole, and save Jess. He could almost hear her voice again, echoing through the void. "Help me!" He plunged his hand deeper into the chest, the air thickening around him. The darkness was viscous, sticking to his fingers as if it wanted to consume him. Lost faces twisted in agony flashed past his mind's eye, and he felt cold fingers of despair claw at his heart. Heart racing, he focused on the necklace that lay dormant at the chest's base, still gleaming like a beacon of hope within that oppressive blanket of shadows. What if it was the clue? What if it held a key to Jess's freedom? As if in answer, a wave of resentment surged up from the depths, slapping at him like icy water. The shadows shifted more violently, their twisted forms stretching, eager to bind him into their sorrow. "Forget her!" "She's gone!" The whispers twisted around him, mockingly urging him to abandon his search. "No, I won't let go!" Mark shouted into the void, rising against the din. The shadows shrieked, a visceral, gut-wrenching sound that tore through the air. They surged upward, constricting, wrapping around his arms and squeezing. Darkness creeping into the edges of his vision. Gritting his teeth, he yanked the necklace free from its prison. Its cold touch felt electric, but in the next moment the trembling shadows recoiled sharply as if stung. He stumbled back, clutching the necklace so tightly his knuckles turned white. The shadows screamed, a sound that clawed at his sanity, and the basement walls fluttered like a dying leaf, the ancient wood straining against the weight of something horrific buried within. "Mark, listen to me." The unearthly voice of Jess whispered through the darkness, now laced with urgency. "You have to destroy it. It'll take everyone you love. If you don't..." Panic clawed at him as every ounce of resolve frayed. But destructive shadows tightened their grip, pulling him toward the very abyss that had swallowed Jess. The last flickers of her face flashed before him. Helplessness swallowed in her eyes. "Mark!" "It's not over," he roared defiantly. "You won't take me too." He locked eyes on the swirling abyss, a swirling void that threatened to pull him under. Fumbling with the necklace, trembling fingers hesitated as his heart thudded painfully against his chest. Was this the moment? Could he really sever the ties that bound them to the darkness? He slammed the necklace against the chest, sparks bursting like angry fireflies. The shrill screams intensified, blurring the boundaries of reality. The chest convulsed violently, shadows writhing as though alive, trying to escape the binding. Then silence. The air crackled, electricity replacing the whispers, an eerie calm settling in, thick and heavy. Had he done it? Swallowing his breath, he strained to listen, waiting for the outcome. The shadows shrank back, but only for a moment. Then they surged once more, the crisis now morphing into a new horror. Something broke loose. A wretched, ghostly wail erupted, sending chills down Mark's spine. The chest began to crack, lines spidering across its surface. Something was coming, something more frightening than he could have ever imagined. The question echoed in his mind, almost drowning out the chaos. Had he awakened an even greater evil? Or was this the beginning of their salvation? "Please, Jess," he cried out, desperate. "Help me." In the swirling darkness, a new flicker of light appeared. It felt both ominous and hopeful. What awaited him on the other side of that crack? The crack in the chest widened, splintering the air with a sharp pop that echoed in the empty basement. Mark felt his breath hitch, a foreign sensation clawing at his throat. The flicker of light intensified, swirling like a tornado of color amidst the heavy shadows. His mind raced. Was this the answer, or the birth of something far worse?
Then darkness? From the crack, a hand emerged, fingers elongated, skeletal, reaching for him. The sight pricked every nerve in his body. The nails were jagged, remnants of agony etched into their very existence. Was this Jess? Was this the spirit of the darkness itself? It didn't matter. He had to decide quickly. "Mark!" Jess's voice surged through him, crystalline amidst the chaos. "You have to close it. Don't let it out." But what if closing it meant losing her forever? The tension strangled him. He steadied his heart against that growing dread. Gathering his courage, he stepped forward, even as the shadows roared in protest. They whipped around him, a furious wind threatening to tear him apart. He dropped to one knee, staring at that wretched hand that beckoned, yearning. "Stop!" His voice trembled, the words almost drowning under the chaos. "Let her go!" With a sudden, dreadful strength, the hand lunged forward, grasping his wrist. A chill shot up his arm, spreading icy tendrils down his spine. The darkness rushed forward, swallowing the light that had sparked hope. "Mark!" Jess screamed from the depths, her voice a piercing cry. The sensation was otherworldly, a frigid grip that tried to pull him in. He gasped, choking as fear mingled with desperation. This wasn't Jess. It was a trap, a deception. The realization hit him hard, grounding him. His pulse pounded against his skull, like a drum summoning dormant courage. In that flicker of clarity, he turned his gaze to the necklace, still clutched in his other hand. Its surface shimmered with an inner glow, a lifeline amidst the collapse. Summoning strength, he pulled his hand free, feeling that icy embrace loosen, if only for a moment. "Mark, you have to—" "Shut up!" The shadows snarled, drowning out her voice with raw fury. They pressed down harder, like a weight intent on coaxing him into despair. He swung the necklace toward the fissure, its light wrapping around his hand like a shield. The shadows recoiled as the energy surged, illuminating the basement for a heartbeat, revealing a phantasmagoric world just beyond that crack, a place rife with tormented faces, all trying to find salvation. "Let her go!" Mark bellowed, desperation flooding his heart. He slammed the necklace forward, pressing it against the gaping crack. The shadows erupted in screams that split the air, sinister and haunting. They twisted, coiling like snakes, seeking to escape the prison of their own making. The light flared, brighter than ever, cutting through the fog of despair. For a split second, he glimpsed Jess again, her expression caught between hope and terror. As the shadows writhed, he could almost reach her. Almost.
But suddenly, the very ground beneath him shuddered, the chest convulsing violently, threatening to detach from reality itself. "Mark, no!" Jess's voice rippled through the chaos, a clarion call caught in the maelstrom. With an explosive cacophony, the chest gave way, a howling wind erupting as the shadows surged outward like a tidal wave. Mark was thrown
back, the necklace slipping from his grasp. He caught his breath, dazed and staring into an abyss alive with madness. In that swirling darkness, those tormented faces grew clearer, and they began to shout. Their cries melded into a single voice, an incantation aimed straight at him. "Join us!" Panic surged anew. What had he unleashed? What would become of Jess? Mark pushed himself up, heart racing ferociously. The shadows were closing in, a deceptive embrace pulling at his sanity. "Jess!" he screamed, clawing at the air as the faces danced with joy and terror alike, enticing him to submit. What horrors lay hidden within that darkness? He had only just begun to understand. Would Mark succumb to the shadows, or face them in a fight for both their lives? Mark stumbled to his feet, the air thick with a rancid, acrid smell as the shadows twisted and churned like a monstrous sea. The faces hovered just beyond the edge of his vision, their mouths moving in a silent scream, a symphony of despair. They reached out with gnarled hands, scraping at the edges of the void, and for a fleeting moment he felt their desperation, an insatiable hunger for freedom. Fighting against every instinct urging him to flee, he forced himself to focus. "Jess!" he yelled, his voice thick with emotion, but all he heard in return was the cacophony of anguished cries. He couldn't let that be the end. The light from the necklace flickered, dimming as though responding to his emotional turmoil. "No! No! No!" Panic clawed at his throat. The visions of Jess, her determined, hopeful face, lost in that whirlpool of shadow, drove him onward. He grabbed the necklace, tightening his grip around its radiant surface. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if stung by its light, but it wouldn't be enough, not alone. Mark had to do something. He scanned the basement for anything else, any weapon, any means to combat this darkness threatening to engulf him. His eyes landed on the remnants of the shattered chest, pieces of wood scattered like bones. Each fragment pulsed with a dark energy, whispering promises of power and destruction. Something didn't feel right, but he had no choice. That might be his only ally. With renewed determination, he ripped a jagged piece of wood from the pile, its surface rough against his skin. Clutching the necklace in one hand and the makeshift weapon in the other, he planted his feet firmly on the basement floor. The shadows writhed closer, sensing his resolve, spitting forth their dark promises. "Join us." "Stay back!" Mark yelled, swinging the shard in arcane patterns, his own heart screaming to be heard over the cacophony. "You'll never have me!" The moment those words left his mouth, the necklace blazed with incandescent light, flooding the basement with an ethereal glow, forcing the shadows to retreat. He pressed forward, summoning the strength he didn't know he had. The light coalesced, forming a barrier as he thrust the shard between himself and the terrifying void. Suddenly, a voice pierced through the clamoring wails. Jess's voice, a strange combination of relief and anguish breaking through the shadowy surge. "Mark, don't give in! You can't let them win!" He felt a rush of energy course through him, a raw pulse igniting his core. She was still here, somewhere in that hell. It lent him courage. "Get away from her!" he screamed as he lunged at the crack, the shard aimed directly into the roiling mass of darkness. The impact resonated through the air like thunder, and with it came a wave of energy, light exploding outward, combustion meeting chaos. Screams turned into howls as the abyss twisted. A blinding flash shot through the basement, engulfing everything.
And Mark felt an insurge of power radiating from the necklace, fusing with the dark wood. For a moment he was weightless, suspended in some otherworldly space, but the shadows lunged, and he suddenly found himself back in the basement. The air was charged, the flickering light returned, pulsating violently. This wasn't over yet. The fractured faces rushed toward him, drawn by desperation and torment. But deep within, amidst that swirling nightmare, he glimpsed Jess, her form radiant, teeth bared in a fierce grin that flickered in and out like a dying star. "Mark, listen to me," she yelled, her voice piercing the chaos. "You have to believe. You control what happens next." Sweat dripped from his brow as he struggled against the darkness pressing in. Was he truly capable of altering this destiny? Could he conquer the shadows, break their hold, and reclaim Jess? The forces collided within him. His heart raced, the shadows' whispers turning into a deafening roar. But a fleeting thought shimmered in that pandemonium. If he had the power to face the darkness, then maybe, just maybe, he could save them both. "Together!" he shouted, channeling every ounce of strength he had left. Would it be enough? What lay ahead could tempt him to relinquish hope, or would it launch him into an even greater terror? The shadows thickened once more, and he hesitated, grappling with his fear. But the faces, the voices, they surged again, beckoning him deeper into that abyss. "Join us," they sang with cruel familiarity. Mark gritted his teeth, heart pounding furiously. Could he pull Jess from that darkness, or would he be lost within it too? The struggle had just begun. The shadows twisted violently, slithering towards him like serpents hungry for flesh. Mark's heart thudded relentlessly against his ribs. Fear clawed at his insides, alive and writhing. "No," he murmured, stepping back. "Not like this." Each pulse of the necklace brought him closer to the brink. Its light was fierce, but the darkness was so much deeper. "Mark!" Jess's voice punctured the air again, fierce but fading. "You have to fight them." The lost faces surrounding him seemed to shift, malicious expressions breaking through the torment. A nightmare made flesh. Mark gripped the shard tighter, his knuckles white. "Won't let you take me!" he shouted. He lunged forward, swinging the sharp wood in again, and the force rippled outwards, a barrier against the shadowy crush. The convergence sparked. The darkness shrieked, a howl of pure dread. In this moment, Mark felt the sheer power that coursed through his veins. It was terrifying and intoxicating. He wasn't just wielding the necklace's light. He felt part of something larger than life, something poised on the precipice of the unknown. He could manipulate this, conjuring fear and hope alike. But it wasn't enough. The relentless screaming grew louder, a thunderous tide rising against his resolve. In the dim glow, he saw Jess again. The conviction in her gaze made her look almost angelic, yet beneath it lay an echo of desperation that slammed against his heart. "Mark, please, remember our promise." He took a shaky breath, heart racing, drowning in memories of her smile. The warmth of their moments together flooded him, igniting something primal. With a guttural scream, he pushed beyond his own limitations, channeling every ounce of his emotion into the necklace. An explosion of light enveloped him, blinding, intense, scorching. The shadows screeched, retreating for just an instant. But their hunger was far from sated. They surged back with greater ferocity. Mark faltered, sweat dripping down his brow, hands trembling. The distorted faces snarled and bared teeth made of shadow. "Stay with us," they crooned, voices slick with seduction, slippery as oil. "Fight it!" Mark shouted, feeling Jess's spirit resonate in those words. "What do you want? I'll never be your pawn." The shadows shuddered, flickering as if reconsidering. For a split second, he glimpsed struggle within the mass, a flicker of confusion mingled with rage.
Mark seized the moment. "I refuse to join you. I am not afraid." With that, he thrust the jagged wood deep into the heart of the darkness, eyes locked on the swirling abyss, thrusting everything he was into that moment. The impact sent shockwaves, and the air crackled with energy. Light exploded around him, bathing the basement in a harsh glare, illuminating everything: the damp walls, the remnants of the chest, and the faces, now contorted in agony. But the light had consequences. The shadows writhed in fury, screeching louder than ever before. It felt like a detonating star. And beneath that brilliance, Mark felt something twist. A bond was weakening, an echo of Jess calling for him from within the grip of darkness. "Mark!" Her voice shattered through the chaos, urgency wrapped in sorrow. "You must let me go!" He screamed, turmoil ripping through him. "No!" He lunged again, trying to reach for her, but the shadows tightened, pulling her further away. "I won't betray you!" But the truth swept over him like cold sweat. By holding on to her, he risked losing both. Suddenly, the basement shook violently, as if the very foundation of this nightmare threatened to collapse. Mark felt the necklace pulse dangerously, and with it a wave of uncertainty. He could feel the darkness seep into his bones, intertwining him with the abyss as the spaces within his head filled with their whispers. Visions flickered, ghastly images of Jess trapped, her face reflected in countless closing nightmares. What if he couldn't fight them long enough? What if this was it? The thought chipped away at his resolve. Amidst the throes of despair, he saw her, her eyes wide with fear, then initially fierce, the flames of hope flickering. "Trust yourself, believe in us." And in that moment, he realized he was not alone. He wasn't merely fighting a battle against the darkness. It was a dance with hope and despair, moving as one. Drawing a breath, he clenched his teeth. The final battle loomed. "I will save you, Jess!" Mark roared, ready to unleash what he could. But what if it awakened something even more sinister lurking in the dark? Would unleashing this power cost him everything? The darkness surged, raw and ravenous. Mark stood at the edge of an abyss, one foot in a world of light, the other teetering into shadow. The air buzzed with energy, crackling around him like a live wire. His blood roared in his ears, drowning out the screams, drowning out the whispers. "Mark!" Jess's voice came again, softer this time. It was a plea, an echo layered with longing and fear. "Please, do it!" He felt the ground shift beneath him, the very house groaning under the strain of the darkness invading. Everything trembled, like the universe itself was afraid of what was about to unfold. Mark's eyes darted around, landing on the faces, lost souls caught in the shadows, their once human forms now grotesque parodies of pain. He couldn't let that happen to Jess, not now, not ever. Fumbling with the shard of wood, he focused on the necklace. The pulsing light seemed to eagerly accept his command, growing stronger, more defiant. With one deliberate motion, Mark slammed the staff into the floor, anchoring himself against the dark tide. The impact caused a shock wave, sending pockets of energy rippling outward. The shadows shrieked and writhed, as if trying desperately to escape. The cacophony filled the basement, drowning out thought and reason. Only instinct remained. "Fight it!" Mark shouted again, feeling a surge of adrenaline spike through him. "I won't let you win!" Suddenly, the faces around him blurred, shifting into forms of people he once knew. Friends, family, even strangers, all claiming him, all pleading for their own salvation. Their voices twisted together, a chorus of despair. "Join us, Mark! Join us!" He shook his head violently. "No, I am not yours!" With that declaration, the shadows surged, a mass of darkness that seemed to breathe, everything contracting and expanding. A new voice joined the chorus, a low, sinister growl that came from deep within the mass. "You cannot fight what you are, Mark. You are one of us." Cold sweat trickled down Mark's spine. That voice, it held a familiarity that sent a chill through his core. It felt like his own. Conscience, tainted and twisted. The dark reality flooded back to him, his own doubts, insecurities, all the times he had felt powerless. "No!" he roared, more fiercely than before. "You don't control me!" He swung the wooden shard again, slicing through the powerful current of blackness, determined to dismantle whatever grip the shadows had on him. A flicker of light pierced through the veil, illuminating a fraction of space ahead. In the heart of that flicker, he could see Jess, a mere silhouette trapped in chains of darkness, her eyes wide with terror and something else. Hope? Despair? It was all too blurred. "Mark!" she cried out, her voice breaking his heart. "You have to break the chains!" Chains? The thought landed in his mind. His heart raced again, not with fear, but with a growing realization. These shadows were not just monsters. They were a manifestation of what he feared. They fed on doubt. Mark forced every ounce of energy from within. "I am not afraid!" How could he possibly believe that? The revelation surged through him, and he felt the necklace pulse like a heartbeat. With renewed resolve, he pivoted, thrusting the wood hard into the ground again, creating a bright fissure where none had existed. The light poured out, sharp and bright, slicing through the thick darkness like a blade. The shadows howled, angry and desperate, their voices mingling into a storm of rage. Mark could feel the walls quake with their fury, as if they were alive and trying to assert their claim. The basement shook violently, plaster cracking under the burden of their collective cry. But then, with every heartbeat, the fissure widened, the chains of darkness began to splinter. "Jess, yes!" she yelled, and for an instant light shone in those depths. And then it happened. A crushing wave of darkness surged forward, threatening not just to consume them both, but to pull apart the very fabric of reality surrounding them. Mark felt agony rip through the air. The shadows wanted to reclaim their prize. "Hold on, Jess!" he shouted, not even sure if she could hear him. The darkness clawed at him, hungry, icy fingers wrapping around his throat. In that paralyzing moment, he faced the creeping doubt again. If he fell, if he failed, it would not only cost Jess, but himself as well. What if he couldn't break those chains? As the abyss closed in, he took a deep breath, placing every ounce of faith into the light, the only thing that could guide them out. Was it too late to change destiny? The shadows exploded in unholy fury, and Mark felt their weight push down. Breathing felt impossible, but he stood firm, arm extended, wood poised, ready to defy every dream he'd ever sacrificed to the dark. It had to be enough. Would the light he summoned pull them free, or would it shatter under the weight of despair? The question lanced through him, and in the darkest moments of fear, it lingered, so tantalizingly close to breaking him. And yet he pressed forward. The basement quaked violently as the shadows shrieked, rising like a furious tide, but Mark refused to yield. "I won't give you Jess!" he roared, summoning every ounce of defiance he had left. His heart hammered a relentless beat, a pulse ignited by a singular truth. Hope wasn't just a flicker, it was an inferno. The necklace blazed in his grasp, light exploding from it and piercing the darkness like an arrow. The shadows twisted and recoiled, shrieks of disbelief shattering the air. Mark embraced the light, melding it with his determination, ensuring it flowed through every crevice of his being. He knew if he could just push a bit harder, he could fend them off, guide Jess back to him.
Mark! Jess's voice wove through the chaos, ethereal and fierce, resonating deep within him. He could see her, just within reach, suspended in the perilous grip of shadows twisted around her form, beautiful yet trapped. "Hold on!" he shouted, leveraging every ounce of strength, thrusting the wooden shard into the growth of darkness again. It screamed, howled, and crumbled at the edges, the very shadows shattering under his unwavering will. The ground shifted beneath him, sending shock waves through the air. The barriers of dark chains that bound Jess began to splinter, revealing the courage in her eyes. "You can do it! Please!" she cried out, a final flicker of hope erupting from her lips. It ignited something deep within him. Mark lunged forward, the shard connecting with the dark boundary just in front of her. Light exploded outward, radiant and pure, as though an unseen sun had unfurled in the heart of the darkness. The shadows shrieked, tumbling backward, their grasp loosened. In that moment, time paused, the air shimmering thick with energy as the light radiated and enveloped them in its warmth. "Now, Jess!" he shouted desperately, the urgency in his voice threading through the chaos. She reached for him, and the moment their hands touched sent a jolt of electricity through both of them. The very essence of his love sprang forth, pooling energy liquid-like between them. They were a constellation battling the void. With one fierce tug, she broke free from the chains, bursting forth into a realm lit by the intensity of their combined strength. They fell into each other's arms, a hurricane of emotions flooding in. Relief, love, terror, and hope all swirled together. But even as they embraced, the shadows continued to screech. They were furious, a mass of anguish coiling in on itself like a predator thwarted. "No, you belong to us!" they howled, and Mark felt the chill creeping back as they searched for a foothold in the hearts of the couple. "No!" Jess yelled, her voice unwavering. "You don't get to claim us. We choose light and love." With that declaration, the necklace pulsed brighter than ever, casting aside the deepening shadows that struggled to swallow hope anew. Together, Mark and Jess pushed forward, channeling their will, the light overtaking the darkness that had thrived on their fears. The shadows, corrupted and muted against the radiance, began to fragment, faces twisting in horror before dissolving into nothingness. A scream that reverberated as they vanished, lost to the light. The basement trembled, walls cracking as the very foundation rattled. The air shimmered alive with energy and profound silence, the oppressive weight easing far beyond anything they could grasp. For the first time in eternity, the whispers fell away, leaving behind a heavy stillness, an echo of freedom reborn. Mark squeezed Jess's hand tightly, relief melting the tension that had gripped their hearts. They stepped back as one, reclaiming their lives. "We did it," he breathed, the weight of the shadows slowly lifting. Jess pulled him close, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Together we fought, together we emerged." Her smile ignited warmth in him, illuminating the remnants of once fading hope. And as light flooded the basement, vibrant and clear, they saw the remnants of the chest dissolve into particles of nothing. The dark chains that had held them were shattered, a mere memory wrapped in the breath of dawn. Nothing stood in their way now. They turned, stepping out of the basement and into a world unshackled from the darkness, stepping into their future. With a final glance back at the echoes of their journey, they held on to one another, knowing their love had triumphed over despair. Together, they walked out of the shadowed past, ready to forge a new path bathed in the light of a brand new beginning. As their silhouettes faded into the brightness, one truth remained. Love and courage would banish the darkness, time after time. You need to subscribe now. If you want more chilling stories and exclusive adventures, you have to stay updated. Smash that like button now so we can keep this content coming your way. Flood the comments section with your thoughts about this ending. Do you think Mark and Jess truly escaped? And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this wild ride ends. Your support helps grow our community and brings these stories to life.